Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Fundi Lenyati. I'm the host of the Dr. Fundi channel. Today, being the third weekend of this month of January, and the second weekend of us, resuming our broadcasts, we have an interesting conversation. We've got a special guest who's going to take us through, a very interesting topic. So last week, as part of kickstarting, year 2022, we invited Reverend Dr. We invited Reverend Doctor from the Methodist Church, Reverend Vusi Vilagati. And the intention was really to, help us, to revive our spiritual health, which is part of holistic health. And in that session, at the end, I then said, today, we will be focusing on the psycho-emotional or mental side, of holistic health. And so to help us with that focus, is Miss Ziyanda Mavumengwana. So she is no stranger to this channel. Last year in March, we actually hosted her, and the response, from the people who were viewing the show was quite good. And I thought, as we start year 2022, I should reach out to her and just give a free role, on whatever she would like to talk about in relation to just developing a different and winning mindset so that those goals that we have for year 2022, can be better, achieved, but also those issues that we've dealt with over the last 2 years, especially with COVID-19, and the lot of grief that most people went through, can also be dealt with as well. So I'm going to hand over to Ziyanda, but before I do so, just a little bit about her. She is a qualified clinical psychologist who has got experience in both the private and the public sector, based in the Eastern Cape. She is an independent practitioner, that is registered with the Health Professions Council of South Africa, and she has got a private practice that is based in my hometown of Umtata, in the Eastern Cape. She is also a second-year PhD candidate at the University of Cape Town. So last year, when she was our guest, she was doing her first year in the PhD studies. So she has now progressed to the second year. I'm sure she still has another year or two to go, depending on how things go with the research and how finicky her supervisors and everyone else is. But she's doing second year of that PhD. With UCT. She also is a board member of Revive. She'll tell us what Revive is, and also Sim Talks. In Sim Talks, she delivers those, with another very brilliant, gentleman, a medical doctor who's based in Umtata, Usim Doni. Lastly, she chairs a mental health and personal development YouTube channel that is called You Are Okay. Most of us will now know that during this time of COVID, we've been saying it's okay not to be okay. So she has a YouTube channel that is called You Are Okay. All right, with those few words of introduction, welcome Ziyanda to the Dr. Fundi channel.
Thank you, Dr. Nyati. It's good to be back. It was a pleasant invitation, and obviously the default answer was yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I reached out to you sometime last week, and I said, you know what, we just need to recharge people, see how we can, help people to look at this new year with a different pair of eyes, use the experience from the past, correct some of the mistakes that they have made, so that they can accomplish more this year as compared to the previous years. You went home and said, all right, let me see how I'm going to tackle this thing. And you came up with an approach which I said, wow, okay, I'm actually very happy with the approach that you are going to take. Most of us have been struggling to deal with issues of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety that, that went with that. So it's one of the things that you're going to talk about. You also said, a lot of people, they focus so much and blame others for things that happen because of their external locus of control. You're going to talk about that. You also said, there is this thing that is called hindsight bias, where things become so much clearer, 2020 vision when you look, in hindsight. So you're going to be talking about hindsight bias. And also, many people, they like to compare themselves with others, yet we are here on unique journeys, different journeys, and sometimes that comparison can work against us because we've got unique journeys, different races to run. So you're going to take us through all of those things. So let me hand over to you, and where necessary, I will, also come in to emphasize a point or whatever, but in general, just go ahead the way you normally do on your YouTube channel.
Thank you. I'm not going to greet how I greet on the channel. I'm sure my subscribers are waiting for me to say, hi guys.
No,
welcome
you can do
my
it.
Channel.
Just do it the way they're used to seeing you. So please give us that greeting.
Hi guys, welcome to the Dr. Fundi channel. While I was still contemplating how soon I should go back to my channel, Dr. Fundi beat us all to it. But nonetheless, I know most of them are on the other side of the screen. So welcome to your care family. I hope you can migrate to this platform, even if I'm not the one that's constantly on the screen. It's valuable information, and I'm here because I trust the platform and I don't mind being associated with the platform. So yes, Dr. Fundi gave me a call and said it's the beginning of the year, people are reflecting, it's vision boards, it's introspection and all of that. And he wanted to just weigh in on how we can position people right, I suppose, to enhance the chances of this year being a better year than others. So I went home to think that, okay, it's a bit broad of a scope, what he's asking us to do, but I look back at the January influx we normally get in our practices of people that have this data that is the outgoing year and are looking at this mountain that is the new year, and they are just, I suppose, completely overwhelmed, either with regret of how things didn't go how they were supposed to go, or complete anxiety and feeling ill-equipped for that which lies ahead. And I went back to him and I said, you know what, Dr. Fundi, what lies ahead is unknown to all of us. We can't tell our clients that it's going to be a good year. We don't know that it's going to be a good year. We can't say they're lying, saying that the past has been awful. Maybe the past has been awful for them. But what I have picked up and studied and practiced in my own life is a couple of these attitude pillars that the people who generally do well, and by do well, I don't mean always win or always succeed, but the subjective distress that they feel is much less and the wellness that they experience is much higher. And I was like, pick the themes of thinking lenses or ways of organizing reality that the people that experience wellness in their life most of the time usually adopt and share them, or the attitude pitfalls that when if somebody has this fear about life, they are going to be under negative emotions majority of the time. So I threw in 4 of those his way and he gave it a thumbs up, said, okay, I like that, go for it. And I suppose we can't begin this conversation without starting with hindsight bias, because it's January and usually in the rearview mirror, we've got the outgoing year and we're introspecting and planning and all of that. And for the people that aren't familiar with the term, hindsight bias generally refers to that psychology phenomenal experience where things just seem obvious, where information becomes obvious once you have it. or psychology sometimes says it, they knew it all along phenomena, when it just feels like you should have known better. And people do this because the story is now complete. So they visit each and every decision. And in isolation, the decision wasn't enough to act on or conclude on. But once the bad outcome has now happened, they include the outcome. And then obviously the outcome is generally the clarifier, was this good or bad? Did this succeed or fail? And they include that outcome and think, damn, how come I didn't see that lentis of Pelaganji? We see this a lot in people that didn't leave failed relationships soon enough. We see this a lot with people where whatever they invested in backfired. We see this a lot, I suppose, in every sphere, really, where once you know something, even in skill acquisition, once you know a skill, it just feels like you've always known it. Hindsight bias will send you straight to a depressive episode. The things you know now, the experience you've got now, that makes you so sure that this was a bad idea. You only got it by going through the experience. And all of the little details leading to this experience. I'll make an example with abuse, for instance. Generally, if you're dealing with an abuser, humans are imperfect, right? And if they do something once, it's very difficult to decide if this is an abuse red flag or if this is general human imperfection. So in all likelihood, if someone raises their voice at you, we are all lying if we're saying, I pack my bags and I would leave. Chances are you wouldn't. You'd probably choose a milder approach, sit them down, give it another chance, observe if this is going to be a pattern. This is how we get to patterns. We give things time. Then maybe they issue an unkind remark and you are cooking and there's a weird passive-aggressive remark about the food that you have made. Yet another thing, discomfort at best. But would you go as far as saying this person is abusive? That would be jumping the gun. So again, you let it slide. But the time that person throws the punch at you, you get to understand that even from item A and item B leading to this was always a picture of abuse. But this is now the complete picture with the thing that was definitive. And only then can we say, this is the story that happened here. So when we eventually have a title to our stories, we get so mad that we didn't know at the first page that this was the title, that we didn't know at the first act that this was always going to lead here. And this is usually such a birthplace for regret for most people, and shaming messages. You're so stupid, you should have known this, how could you miss something so obvious, why did you let it go on for this long, and there is something that is the benefit of hindsight, which is wisdom. But wisdom you get in hindsight. When we look at everybody who is experienced and everybody who is wise, we want that experience for ourselves. We want that quality for ourselves. But all of us reject the very experiences that made them experienced and that made them wise, and not all of them were pleasant. So for everyone who is reflecting and they know exactly, it's clear now what went wrong, I would like to issue that statement that it's always clearer in hindsight. It's always clearer, even when you drive, guys, in the rearview mirror, everything that was a steep incline and a sharp curve, it just looks so much clearer when you look back where it was leading you. But with blind eyes, you really, really don't have much visibility in what lies ahead. And once you've passed it, all of it, the narrative is semblant so beautifully, and you finally get a clear picture of what to call that thing. Even in my personal life, I've experienced this, where before I made the move to come to Mthatha, you just know as much as you know, but there's some things about the journey that will only be answered by the journey. And when I eventually got here, not all of them were a success, but it was by being here that you know for certain that, okay, picking it this way, maybe in hindsight, I would have chosen it this way, but that is the value I got from the hindsight.
Mm.
So we are altering that bias, that don't judge yourself for hindsight experiences. You can't want to be an experienced person, but you don't want the experience. I'm not proud of each time I misdiagnosed or made an error in clinical judgment, but that is why now I am 20 times better than a recent graduate. Of course, they are going to get a couple of things wrong, which are well-intentioned but clinically naive. And whenever they know more, they're always going to look back at that moment and think, man, how did you miss this? I had this feeling the last time I had my first patient with a personality disorder. That person was my favorite patient. They were always on time. You know a classic narcissist, right?
Yeah.
They were always on time. They looked so prim and proper. They were well spoken. I was vibing with my patient. But in hindsight, fully understanding how narcissism works, how gaslighting works, how the grandiosity presents, it's literally like I can spot a narcissist from the door. But that is only in hindsight, learning from the experiences that I completely fumbled, in the past. So I think when most people come in and they're not too happy about the outgoing year, laying out in the open the information that they feel like they got wrong is usually such a burden lifting experience to look at it and be like, was it always as predictable as you say it was? Though? Was it always this obvious? Because if it was, and you are hell-bent that if you were to go back, you wouldn't make this call again. If it was that obvious, then why did you make the call?
Yeah.
I had missing data. People don't want to admit that I had missing data. And to the best of my ability, to remove the outcome, in all likelihood, I would make the same decision. The reason I'm saying I'd make a different decision now is because of this recent outcome. But outside this outcome, in all likelihood, most people, given the information that they had at the time, would make the exact same decision.
Yeah.
And people should just have a bigger appetite for not knowing. And like, I don't know. I know as much as I know.
Yeah, no, as you are talking, as Ziyanda, I'm reflecting, on the fact that yesterday, we got news, terrible news, that one of the greatest actors that this country has ever had, Mr. Patrick Shy, who was also a gender activist, against issues of GBV and stuff. He had, taken his life. And the news that's coming out is that he made a mistake. And that mistake got him to get the wrong side of, I'll call it Black Twitter. It judged him harshly to an extent that he, it was something it was threatening to obliterate the whole legacy that he had built to date because he made a mistake. All right. And he came back and apologized about it on the same Twitter, but people had already judged him. So you talked about judgment. Sometimes we judge ourselves as individuals or others, on analyzing what happened in the past. They judge you when the final outcome has actually come. So, but in his case, it, seems to have put him in a very, very bad space. Obviously, more information is still going to come, and we shouldn't be talking about that. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes judgment, now that all the facts are there, even more when the person had already seen that they made a mistake and they should have been wiser in terms of the choice of words that they use. So I'm just trying to say this is not just, talk. Sometimes, these things of self-judgment can actually lead to terrible consequences. And I thought I should just, come in there. You have talked about narcissists and gaslighting. Maybe towards the end, you can talk to us about that, because it's one topic that I was asked if I could get somebody of your caliber to just give people a sense of what a narcissist is. So I'm not going to say right now, just continue the way you had planned to continue with the topic.
Yes. And before we even jump to a next topic, Dr. Fundi, this reflection isn't necessarily always a bad thing. Because at the end of the day, when the facts are complete, the whole point behind feeling bad is there's something about guilt that births remorse out of us. So we don't want people to not be guilty. We do want people to have a healthy portion of guilt experiences, because when you get that little sign that you've acted outside your integrity, if you feel guilty, we can generally assume you're not going to repeat that thing again. You are unlikely to repeat that thing again. The problem here becomes when a person is reflecting and they attach shame and judgment to a human experience, which is that humans are generally very limited in their ability to see into the future. It's not completely unfounded that we are different from animals in that we are aware of a pending future, So it's coming from somewhere. We're not entirely wrong that we are aware of such a future and gifted in how we can manipulate our odds in that future. Humans can do this, but it's always this language sophistication that yes, estimation and control are not the same thing, because we can estimate outcomes and pretty predictably too. We usually think, no, this means I can tell the future. And once you correct this language, people generally feel like the load is lighter of regret, because it's when you feel like you were supposed to know something, it feels very bad when you realize that you actually don't know something. But when you phrase it right, that I just hoped, I wish I knew, that's a lighter burden on your shoulders. It's a wish unmet. But when it's something you believe you were supposed to know, you feel stupid for not knowing it. And this is the difference between coping with adversity and being paralyzed by it, by the language you use, by describing events right. So when people reflect, I don't want them to think we're saying don't reflect accurately on bad events. No, by all means, go ahead. And if you've done something wrong, I want you to own that. I encourage you owning that. But healthy guilt is supposed to birth remorse. And before it, just nicely linking to our next topic, guilt can only help you if that thing was your fault to begin with. It's a misplaced emotion completely if you are feeling guilty for something that in the future, you can't rectify it because the responsibility for it doesn't belong in your hands. And this is a very, very important psychological dilemma to successfully negotiate. That balance between that which is intrinsically up to you and complete surrender to the part of life that isn't up to you. And when people land in our cultures, there are always an error in how they overestimated or underestimated the other one. Either they are completely minimizing their role in a matter, or they've completely given way too much power to that which happens outside, or they really, really, really overestimate, their control and get paralyzed when life humbles them. But that wasn't even up to you. What made you believe so certainly that this thing is going to happen like this at this time? Because that is literally hinging on things that you can't control. So generally, when people are very sad about what happened, and you're looking at their solid plan that has now not completely worked, you realize, but why did you have so much confidence in this plan? It depended on funding, it depended on other people's decisions, on systems, on rules and regulations. You're like, but lifting COVID bans wasn't in your hands. How fast we were going to go across vaccinating people wasn't in your hands. But because at this time of the month, I was supposed to host this thing and I couldn't because of the COVID ban. Or their business idea, the concept was really brilliant. They're as prepared can be, but it hinges on funding. But they feel stupid, like this thing sucks, they regret it. But you're like, Apia Yamakon was a funding opportunity. And that part of life wasn't up to you. What made you think, these timelines were poorly adjusted? They didn't accommodate for the normal and very inevitable thing. You have this plan, and there is an external force outside of all of us. And a healthy psychologically functioning ego is one that takes full accountability for the part that is yours to control and complete surrender to the part that isn't yours to control. Because if you deny either of these realities, you're going to have a problem. If you downplay your autonomy and your role in matters, you run the risk of repeating dysfunction because you're unaware of your actions that put you back in this position.
Indeed.
But also, if you ignore the stuff that isn't up to you, you're going to overplan or underplan, and your stuff is going to perpetually fail because you're not accommodating external events and you are not surrendering to them. You'll see most people that battle with things are pushing back against external forces. They are refusing to accept the human limitation that yes, you are smart, yes, you are wise, yes, you've got brilliant foresight, but you can't see into the future. Do a decision that has occurred in this future because it's not what they planned for. And there's typical personalities that fall victim to this, and my personality is one of them. I generally don't do well with surprises. But because now I've updated insight and autonomy, it's a conscious act to train this muscle of surrendering to the unknown, but it does not come naturally. Therefore, for most people, it's also a huge psychological fight to successfully negotiate a balance of things that are not up to you. The future is not up to you. Yes, you've got autonomy in responses you can play out in the future. Yes, you've got autonomy in somewhat manipulating that future, to some degree in terms of the level of vulnerability to find you in. But the future itself, there's not much you can do about that. There's not much you can do about that. And this is a big, big thing, Dr. Fundi, that if you sit with a person down, I kid you, most of the time, there's a severe error in their understanding of how much they can control, or them severely downplaying the part that they can control and acting as if everything is outside of them and life is happening to them and they are completely at the mercy of circumstance. This is where hopelessness comes in and helplessness comes in. And we know once you start speaking these terms, you're well on your way to a depressive episode, because truly you feel so vulnerable and so at the mercy of stuff happening to you. And that's the era of downplaying that, yes, stuff is happening to you, but actually you are downplaying and minimizing a whole lot of options available to you as a response to this stressor that could make your experience way lighter than what it is. So seek a therapist if you must, whatever it will take, but successfully make sure you've got a good balance between an understanding of personal agency and autonomy and accepting limitation. This is a sign of growth, to accept human limitation. You can't control how people act towards you. You can't control if a heart that made a promise to you will carry it through. You can't control if funders will be impressed with your idea. You can't control COVID bans and travel bans. You can't control those things. And you are not being pessimistic and cynical when you admit that. You are not giving up on the relationship when you choose to walk away. You are updating the adult self that you are limited as a human being in the amount of things you can do. And that's one of the things you cannot control. You can't control people's lifespan. I know it's sad when you lose someone you love, but this wasn't a thing that you could control. This isn't a fault of your own. But even when these bad things happen to you, because when the reason we run away from how much we can't control, we're really avoiding the anxiety of feeling like we're going to be outweighed by the threat. So we want to believe you can mitigate, you can predict the direction stock control is going to go. We read horoscopes. We are trying our best to make sure we can predict and control the future, because we are so scared of, if you can't see it coming, it's going to catch you off guard and you're going to be completely unprepared to respond to it. So therapy response to this generally includes investing heavily in self-trust, that although you don't know what's going to happen in the future, you have a good shot if you know you. If you know you and invest in you and your resources and your responses and your ways of doing things, even if what happens in the future is completely overwhelming, it's not completely uncertain, because you've got you, and that you can control, that you can predict. Now, before I moved to Mthatha, I was telling a friend of mine that, what if I don't get clients? What if I don't like the town? What if I drown? And then, what if I'm in too deep? And she said, maybe it is in too deep, but you're not going there because you are minimizing its depth. You're going there because you trust your swimming capacity. And that to me was such a life-changing perspective, that truly, I've even read a quote about it somewhere. It was this cute, silly quote, that the bird is not on the tree because the tree won't break, but because it's got wings to fly. So little sentiments like that are speaking to the same thing, that you don't know what's out there, but you know what's in here. And therefore, you're not completely at the mercy of circumstance. You may not know what's going to happen, but you know what you're going to do if A and B and C happen. And the worthwhile investment is to put more resources in your basket, that whatever life is going to ask of me, I want to be found, prepared, and resourced. And that's a thing that we preach a lot in the channel, and that I preach a lot to my clients, that if you don't know it, you don't know it. But if you know you're not completely lost there. And therefore, when people learn that, they have less of an appetite to control the future. They're also not freaking out much about what this future could bring, because they know what they're taking into the future. They don't know what the future is bringing, but they know what they're taking into it. And therefore, they're not completely vulnerable.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, so much wisdom. Yeah, one thing that I keep on hearing is, look at what you can control, and be realistic about what you can control and what you can't control. And I'm sure it takes us to that issue of uncertainty, one of the things that you're going to be talking about. Yeah, let's hear more.
Yeah, and just touching on uncertainty, there's a reason why humans are certainty hungry. And they're usually trying to buffer themselves against anxiety, because if you're not certain about something, you're also not certain about how threatening it is. And of course, we are self-preserving humans. We've got a self-protective element because we're trying to stay alive, and we've got the skills to stay alive. So hungering for certainty is literally just trying to be self-preservative. I'm trying to keep myself alive. So if I can see the enemy coming, I can better prepare myself for it. So I don't want people to feel bad for always wanting to know what's going to happen in the future. I usually respect that stance because you really want to heighten the chances of you making it in the future. And we like this because it buffers people against suicidality, because they want to stay alive and they're trying to control as many controllables so that they stay alive. So hungering for certainty is a universal human thing. And this is another thing that I want us to touch on, Dr. Fundi, that people that do well in mental health spaces and that are less prone to mental health challenges are people that learn how not to personalize the human experience. You know, a lot of people that are sitting here aren't sitting here because something happened to them. They're sitting here because they think it only happens to them. And the shame and the feeling worthless and the feeling stupid happens because nobody else is talking about it. So they draw the judgment that other people seem to have a better grip at this life thing than me. And that is not true. I'm welcoming spaces like this, like the YouTube channel. A lot of people are coming through now in sharing experiences, and almost a collective support group that is happening on the socials, which is really, really welcome, because a lot of people are so shame-ridden over something that is happening to them because they don't know that this is a universal human experience. This is not a you thing. You know, it takes me back to the wisdom of old people. Whenever they give you advice, they just ask you to chill. They are generally unfazed. You know, they've seen so much of life and this phenomena that they just need you to chill, because this thing is not a you thing. You know, this is especially true for things that are morally questionable and hectically judged by society. People just think other people know it better, because people seem to have it handled. It's usually on our social media platforms, which is a snapshot of highlights. You know, we are brands on social media. So you position yourself intentionally in the picture you are trying to portray. But it's not a totality of our experience. I kid you not, all humans know adversity, all of them, in different ways, wearing different hats, but adversity visits all of us. So I'll pick up warning at people aren't going through the most like you. Because you are reading true parts of their existence, but not total parts of their existence. Yes, you may look at them and it looks like they're wealthy. That is very true. They are wealthy, but wealthy isn't the only thing that they are. They've got health challenges with their kids, debt problems and whatever. People are going through a lot out there. And this should bind us as humans to have compassion for one another, because suffering is known to all of us. You may know loss from losing a company, I may know loss from losing a human being, but both me and you can connect from a place of knowing loss and what loss feels like, although we didn't lose the same thing. It's never about the item, it's always about the feelings that loss accompanies. So all of us know embarrassment. Someone else may be humiliated by not knowing. Another person is humiliated because a consultant asked something and they didn't have the right answer. Another person was shamed, like that is shy on social media. But all of us know how nakedly humiliation is, and we can connect from that level. So it's not that I would do the same thing that he did and attract the same backlash, but I've been humiliated in my life for other things. Therefore, I could have empathy for the humiliation that he was sustaining. Let it not be a point of envy. When you look around and you see other people, let it tell you that actually life is synthesized. It's a combination of good experiences and bad experiences. So when you see people living good, know that goodness is possible even for you. And when you feel adversity, even if you're not talking to other people about it, I guarantee you, I'm a clinician who sits on this chair and receives adversity. It wears many different hats, and it doesn't respect no social economic class, no race, no gender. It's a human experience. And when you treat yourself as going through a human thing, you hate yourself less for it. Making mistakes is a human thing. Making errors in judgment is a human thing. It's not a you stupid thing. It's not a you should have known better thing. It's a human thing. And the quicker you accept humanness, the less you judge yourself for it, the more of a compassionate voice that can ring in your head. That, man, humanity makes us so vulnerable to mistakes, to error. And I really wish I had superpowers. I wish I had superpowers sometimes. I wish God could deposit a few of his tricks to me when I just realized I wish I knew that sooner than I do. But it's a human thing to not see into the future. I wish I didn't trust that person, but it's a human thing to be hopeful. It's not a you thing. It's a human thing. Stop personalizing error and stop personalizing suffering. It's not only you. I promise you this. It's not only you. My profession is based on human experiences and how universal they are. If they were singular, we wouldn't build an entire discipline on them. Psychology is a response to the human experience. I sit with people here, Dr. Fundi, and they think they're going to tell you the worst story you have ever heard in your life, from your pedophiles to your murderers, to your antisocial people in prison, and they think that their personal story and shortcoming is the dirtiest you'll ever hear. From your pornography addictions, and then they narrate the story and you're like, the fact that we've got data on that and clinical protocols on that tells you just how common it is. This is not a you thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a treatment strategy for it. It's based on data and samples that are pretty large. Hence, we can publish articles on it. But people, because is, we're so disconnected in modern society because of modernization. So, the experience until someone validates and responds with compassion for it, because we are and only then the shame lifts. When your dirty story can be met with kindness and you realize this is a human experience. I'm just like other humans. Therefore, talking and connecting with other humans can perhaps bring me solutions to my problems.
Yes. Now, Dr. Ntokozo Sheli Dambuza, I'm sure you know her from PE. She's at NMU in the pharmacy department there. So she says, so much wisdom indeed, Doc. Thank you for this discussion. It reminds me of the anxiety I had when I relocated from Cape Town to PE in December 2013. So I think she's latching on your anxieties as you were moving to Umtata to start practice there. She's seeing similarities there. Yeah. And Mavumengwana Bulawa is also, picking up that stop personalizing error, because it's a human experience. We all make errors. Yeah. But anyway, you can continue.
And the funny thing about uncertainty is that when we are trying to, I suppose, foresee what could happen, very few people always estimate joy, which is another thing that uncertainty brings. Surprise, Waterpoint. I'm saying this because of Dr. Mavumengwana. She's a person I didn't know before I moved to Mthatha, but their solo medics practice in Solo is one of the anchor referral practices to my practice in Mthatha. And when I try to plan my Mthatha, when I was looking at how uncertain it is, I didn't create room for joy. That as much as the future is uncertain, the pleasant surprises are also uncertain. Yes, threat may spring up, but so can joy, so can good outcomes, so can good relationships. So when people are scared of the future, it's always a worthwhile reminder to say, you're not wrong. Bad things may very well happen. You're not entirely wrong about that. But equally so, beautiful things may happen. And why aren't you looking at the future like that? That I'm looking ahead in wonder and in curiosity of the many things that are going to happen in Mthatha, the faces that I don't yet know. If you ask me about my Mthatha chapter and my PE chapter, the people that are main characters in my story now, and if you're to tell me who are your anchor people, they're not the same faces, and they are Mthatha people I have never met before I set foot here. I have fallen in love with so much in the town. So when we look at blank pages and so terrified what the future is going to author, it's a worthwhile consideration that it isn't only going to author adversity. It's going to author good things as well, because life is always a synthesis and a combination of both. So Dr. Mbulawa has been one of those people that just remind you that there is stations of help on the journey. There is aid when you need it. And that is also uncertain. So bad boogeyman isn't the only uncertain thing about a scary unknown future. Joy and goodness and just abundance you have never seen in your life could also be uncertain. So when your brain is playing tricks on you, telling you how uncertain your future is, agree that is uncertain and that is potentially exciting. That is uncertain. It's successes and opportunities that you won't always foresee. So when you're trying to calculate and estimate the future, let it be a complete story. That yes, bad things may happen and good things may happen, and I have an appetite for a full and whole experience as a human being. People, Dr. Fundi, must be attracted to a full human experience. It's naive to think when a good things must happen to you. That is not how nature works. That is not how life works. Everything has seasons, and in your life you must have an appetite and a hunger for a full human experience, whatever that entails. My dad used to make a joke, you know, and he's right. There's been times where life reminds me that life is life, and I'm just but one human in the life journey. So yeah, that's a beautiful reminder there by Dr. Mbulao that truly she was one of the surprise flowers on my journey and main characters in my practice story. I can't tell my practice story without mentioning Zolo Medics. It was such a pleasant surprise.
Beautiful. And you mentioned something earlier around social media, that we just see snippets of people's lives. We don't see the whole of their lives, because people choose what they want to show there based on the brand that they want to build. And sometimes you may then think that, wow, it's only good things that are happening there with Dr. Fundi. And now I've got my issues. He said that some of the things I choose not to bring them to Facebook. And then people think that, wow, it's just I'm cruising, and yet that's not a total, or what we call full human experience. All of us have got ups, all of us have downs. And when you've got your down, it will be temporary. There will come an up for you as well. We are on different journeys, and there's different times of us being blessed, along that journey. But anyway, please continue.
Yeah, that is very, very true. And even when you actually look at the genesis of the comparison, you'll see that even if a person is comparing, the variable they are using is so thin, it's singular. Either they will compare according to chronological age, that me and so are the same age. Therefore, if they've been able to do this and I haven't been able to do this, definitely it's an inherent shortcoming on my side. Or they're going to use professional benchmarking, that we graduated at the same time. Look at how quickly they've been able to make this from their life. And then when I challenge my clients and say, okay, let's go ahead with this comparison, but if we're going to compare, let all the confounding variables be included, because there is so much that goes into a success story, except for a singular variable. So if you're choosing Dr. Fundi, let's bring all of it. And then suddenly they are taken aback, that, okay, if I'm comparing myself to Ziyanda, but let's include everything. Ziyanda is one of two parents that are living in the same household. That is already an advantage most South Africans don't enjoy. I'm raised by people who have a combined income. And then they're like, okay, I didn't count that, but that she had a head start in some matters. My parents are educators, and just by the literacy available in the house, I had a better shot of being a literary person than the average South African, But someone else who had a mom that had to drop out for socioeconomic reasons, although they may have both parents, how educated are the two parents? Different odds. But when they're making this comparison, they used one thing in the story and felt completely outweighed in this comparison. But if you're going to compare, then be complete in your comparison. Include the other things, include the head start that they had, the health advantage that they had, the social advantage that they had. And then you'll see, actually, this comparison doesn't make sense. It makes zero sense. You are comparing a banana and an apple, and they are not the same thing. So if you insist on comparing, make sure you've got all the data on the table. Because if you're going to look at a Ziyanda and think, okay, why is she doing a PhD already? There's just advantage in the academic space that I have that another person doesn't have. It also costs money to study. Both of my parents were employed. That's something that someone else doesn't have. I grew up in a village where both of my parents grew up there. So the social capital, when my parents start to struggle, there's 20 hands to catch me, in my vicinity. maybe when your parent was an only child, my dad has multiple siblings. They have had many children, multitude of cousins. When I'm broke, my cousins jump in. So you may think, why did her practice survive in COVID? But there's a cousin who paid my rent. There's another brother who took care for my groceries. And therefore, I could survive, the adversity of COVID. So we're not on the same boat. Abanye bakuphethe boat, abanye bakuyat, and it's systemic things that went into building your kind of boat. So the vulnerability we bring into life is not the same. The head start we have is not the same. I've got my head start, but if you look at people whose parents were profs and whose income bracket was higher than that of educators, though you may think they're the same age, from a marital institution, from employed parents, they have a head start. So I'm not looking at them with envy. I know we're not comparing the same thing here. If we're going to choose a control group, make sure it matches. Research will teach you that variables are confounding. There's other things that could lead to that success outcome, except for what you're saying is responsible. So please include everything. If you want to insist on comparison, don't compare, guys. Don't. I promise you, no one person has a similar journey to the next person. The only thing that is common to all of us is that we are humans. That's the only thing that we share. Thereafter, it's genetics, the intellectual advantage. I didn't even work for it, so someone can look at, oh my gosh, she sounds so smart, literally born, with just the right set of circumstances. This is not something I worked for. And then the person with an intellectual disability, no matter how hard they work, is not going to have a PhD. That is just not going to happen. And that is no shortcoming of effort or anything on their side. We are not matching the same things. Therefore, invite intellect and think, you know what, I'm smart. I have the added advantage of knowing how to build a longer table where someone who did not have my advantage can come and sit here. We're a collective people as humans. So be glad if Dr. Fundi can reach the top sooner than me. We are trusting that as a collective unit, his win is our win. It's not comparative suffering that look what they have and what they don't have. And you're not going to win there. You're really, really not going to win. Shared humanity should be a birthplace for empathy and connection. That I'm human, I know what they're going through. Because I'm human and they're human, I know what they're going through. I don't want another human to go through that. I know what it would feel if it was me. That's the only comparison talk. I know we like benchmarking. We're a society of averages. If you look at the psychology of stereotypes and all of those things, there's argument behind why people categorize and box, because there's just too much data if you want to process it one by one. So boxes make processing easy for us. Just label people there, they all 30, they all psychologists, they all this. And these patterns make us then think they're the same. No, they are similar. They are not the same, So we must audit our errors of thinking and processing information. And comparative suffering is one of those common errors that you made the mistake of boxing them by thinking everything that is in this box. Guys, there's just one box, the human box. That box is colorful and messed up and imperfect and glorious, but songs is a box in a one, don't look at that box and think I'm not in that box. Let's collapse the box walls and just come in one box and learn from each other. When you watch a person, that's why people like mentorship. When they've walked a journey, it's easier for the next one to walk it. Look at humans like that Dr. Fundi, you've done this for 2 decades. I'm entering into it. There's things that I don't know. That's the only comparison we should be having. That another human has walked this. They must throw the net this way because I want to walk a similar journey. Not envy that, why did he walk it and I didn't walk it, but we were born in the same year. And it's just a mental health, meltdown. But comparative suffering is the difficult one.
Now, there's something I just wanted to just bring in as you were talking about this issue of comparisons. Sometimes you get people who then say, you know what, at age 25, this must happen to me. At age 30, this must happen to me. At age 35, this must happen to me. At age 55, I must retire, having made enough money, whatever. So so now, come age 35 or age 40, and I want to be married by age 30, and then they beat themselves up, because now they have compared themselves with another colleague, varsity, who got married in the mid-20s. and all of that. But they don't look at the totality, like you said, that maybe on the career side, maybe they have progressed more, So therefore, don't just look at one variable and use that to beat yourself up, because there could be other aspects of your whole where you actually are doing much better than the other person, So no, I was just trying to bring that, was I know a lot of people who sometimes beat themselves up because certain things that were, expectations, or even their families. Like we in December, people are asking, Kanji, when is this happening? When is that happening? When are you having a child? All of those kind of things, because they are comparing, themselves, and sometimes people don't do well with that kind of comparison.
They don't. I think the biggest the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to not be overly prescriptive about what your life should look like.
Yeah.
Because that rigid picture, the narrower the walls you've drawn for yourself, the more you're going to struggle when you realize, but hey, it's not happening the way that I imagined it. It's kindness to literally give yourself wider room and alternatives in your life. People are such multi-storied, multi-layered individuals, Dr. Fundi, and they should try and shy away from this magnifying glass on one aspect of their life and what it should look like. The people that enjoy mental health benefits are people that tell their life like a complete, comprehensive story. Because when there's many layers to your life, it's very rare that all of them will go badly at the same time to the same severity. So the more descriptions you've given to your life, the more you enjoy that, okay, while occupationally I'm not doing well, health-wise I'm at my best, because you've defined yourself as thickly and as descriptively as you can. So when people come to our therapy spaces, therapists, we're always listening to alternative stories, because when they come, they're usually bringing a dominant story, which is the problematic story. And then you must try hard to listen to, yes, that thing happened, but you cannot tell me that, the boyfriend that broke up with you is the only thing that has happened. And that summarizes the totality of your existence as a human being. And as they narrate things, you must be listening to how they have been doing in other areas of their lives, and you feed that back to them. That, yes, that is true, but there's other things that are true. And as an adult, you take now the magnifying glass to decide what story you are going to tell the loudest. And if that story is not working out well, you can move the magnifying glass to another one. We are multi-storied as humans. Your meaning making in life is going to feel so good when your life is colorful. I know when one thing has been a problem, it just seems like it took over the other things. We like to give one story proper mileage. If it's a pretty story, you just go with that as if being pretty is your only identity. Yes, people are pretty, but they are smart and they are kind and they've got good social capital. There's many other things about you that are true, multi-talented. There's not a single person, even if they are good at that thing, that it's the only thing that they are good at. And do yourself the favor that if you're going to benchmark, okay, by 30, I want to do this, that if that didn't happen, there's so many chapters to pull from and enjoy from. So be a good psychologist, but be also a person who's a present mom. That maybe in the parenting game, you are so fulfilled. Have fulfilling relationships and friendships that you just know relationally, I'm so content. I'm not making as much money as I want to, but I'm happy. So when your happiness hinges on many things, it's very rare that it will be taken away from you. But should life kick down that one thing, you are so miserable. So people that are happy, unhappy because life is perfect, but they didn't have one source of happiness and they didn't have one descriptor of their life. Allow your chapters to vary, in their significance. You're not going to win at all of them at the same time. But when about focus at one, there's a bit of a problem. You are a bigger individual than just one thing. And this will protect you when you've messed up one part, that even if you are bad, don't. You are not globally bad as a human being. Maybe you're just I'm bad at admin, or I'm bad at relationships, or whatever the case is, but without you owning that you're a bad person. So do yourself the favor of detailing your life as richly as you possibly can.
Yes. Now, there is a comment here from Linamanda Pauti. All right. He's saying, I'm not sure it's a he or a she, but says, I'm always comparing. right? I'm always comparing myself. People my age got things to show, and I am 27. I have nothing to show. I don't even know how to stop this, and it's crippling me. So it talks to the issue that you talked about, Uguti, you know, the thing of comparing. It would be nice to know, you know, and if you know, if she was at your practice, I'm sure you would be looking broader than that one variable that seems to be the one that he or she uses to you know,
yeah.
herself.
And it's a strange thing, Dr. Fundi, because this person who's making this comment in particular, I don't know if you follow the socials, but this is the one person who was responsible for such a, you know, that reintegration of the Black community and their core values. We've always been a people where one person's problem becomes an object of social concern. We're not people who abandon each other, but we've disintegrated, you know, as a people. And Lorna single-handedly, without even putting that much effort, brought the entire country together to find Umgidi of a family. There was a family member who inboxed her because she's got a social media audience and said, Umdana wasekaya uzaba nomgidi. We're not doing that greatly financially as a family. Could you put the word out there? And last I followed that, the country had collectively raised over 100,000 for that ceremony. I think that positioned that family and the generations that are going to come from them at a very different place, because destroying Bagom Kitty, they had resources, you know, to do to another thing and another thing, and maybe even position of boy, position of boy at a much further place than what he would have been, because like a social Lorna did that. This is the person who, if you guys compare Naya, Dr. Fundi, we haven't been able to do that, you know, just put word out there. You know, people are hustling for funding for years and years and years on end. Thick proposals, and we're not winning. And she put a Facebook post and probably went on with her life and chiki. If she has influence that you will never imagine. Influence that people go to boardrooms and they don't have. And I don't want to disclose much of her personal life, but I also know that she is an upcoming actress who is very, very talented and takes risks so much by putting her work out there. So there's alternative narratives even in Lorna's life. Although I don't know her intimate to pinpoint them to her, just the brief that I know, the one thing I know about Lorna, she sold veg, Dr. Fundi, and the entire country knew. I lived in PE when there was this girl in Tata on socials that was selling vegetables, for income. She's got that about her, and it's not a skill that is universally shared. And she's got multiple. And I know that if she was my client, I would look for that alternative narrative, and I would find it, that she's got stuff to show. And the beauty of her life is that her stuff to show has witnesses. That is a person that has done stuff that is witnessable. She's not fabricating her greatness. She's displayed it, and all of us have seen it.
Yes, and then there's Annelisi Linda Zumana, who says, how does one overcome the comparison when they were an academic student in primary and high school and university? Everything goes south, everything delays in life. So moving from a high chapter to being a laughing stock. So that's a comment from Annelisi Linda Zumana. Dr. Nozuko Mkabai says, such a breath of fresh air in my hometown in Umtata. Our people have lacked access to such high level of professionalism for decades. I'm so pleased. All right, so that's a homie. And then the last one, Unam Bosi says, but where you are is where others want to be. Be grateful and embrace the position you are currently at. I think she's responding to Ulona Linamandla. And then Dr. Tambuza says, but to Lona, says, Lona Linamandla, when I decided to register for my PhD full-time in 2010, all my friends had houses and cars and money. I had none. I was 31 years old. I intentionally preached to me that this is my journey, you know, and its success will be determined by God's timing, not society. Today, I've achieved most of what I wanted, and I was a late bloomer, but I'm taking it one step at a time. So she's just, again, saying it didn't faze her, the fact that other people that were with her adversity, who qualified with her, they had certain material possessions that she did not have, because she still wanted to pursue the academic direction, towards getting a PhD. And the academic direction, but later on, so I thought, let me just share, those. And Lorna says, yay, this is necessary. So responding to some of the comments that you've made, for her, which, that alternative narrative, because she's weighing herself, and comparing herself on measures that maybe narrow the totality of her life. Yeah, but we can continue, sis.
Yeah, and our brains do this all the time, Dr. Fundi. People who follow CBT models of thinking will identify these cognitive distortions that, yes, whatever is making, for instance, Lorna, for example, really, really sad and feeling unaccomplished is probably true, but it's not the only thing. Why are you selling only the negative story to her? So it always helps to partner up with a compassionate voice that's going to remind you the information that your mind is overlooking, that and we get pushed into that corner because generally the thing that causes us the most pain is the thing that we hunger for the most. So guys, but that which I really, really desperately want is the one in Islangan. And generally when people are stuck at this place, it's so fascinating, Dr. Fundi, to sit with them and do an audit. And you'll always see that a lot of these things happen for a reason, and generally a reason that they did not orchestrate personally. So you'll see if exclude financial exclusion, you sit, and then when you make them understand that, okay, if you can position, you will see about 10 things that led to that decision, were things that were outside their control. And then basically you are a victim either of a systemic injustice, of misinformation, or of just misfortune, which is a thing that life will deliver now and now again. And once they realize that, you realize that you're on the receiving end of harsh conditions that were not delivered by you. Most people suddenly are looking at themselves in ridicule. Most of them actually are proud of how they triumphed the situation. That's and this is you'll be surprised how many of us are born into a narrative. That one divorced, that one abandoned, that one mess we create. And how you fought your way past that. And you are here amazed at the fact that this person even entered varsity, because the odds painted by life even before their birth, they didn't paint a varsity story, but people will undermine this because and are not looking at, it's always been you. It's you who came out of that abandonment from that person. It's you who actually beat that system, and that system of an overcrowded class and teachers, that don't have a lot of teacher training, because you see, all of us have jumped these hoops. All of us have jumped these hoops, and these would be hoops that if you look back, were socially engineered, especially true for Black people, where a lot of stuff that didn't give them a head start was not their problem. And they've come hard at fighting against such a problem. So most of them are already overcomers by nature of being able to plug into a device and listen to a person virtually speaking to you, presumes you own such a device. Is it where most of us are desiring to be? Most not. So every now and again, take an audit of your achievements and take an ally that you trust, an objective sounding board, and they must do an audit of your life, and you go and compare. And I guarantee you will always underscore yourself of what you have achieved. This is the pitfall of subjectivity, that when you are here and it feels painful, it just feels like it has always been this way. Nothing seems to be going right because your energy is depleted from your efforts. But they're empty, no objective. They are so clear in their visibility, and they will be able to detail to you. So do this. I ask my friends, but I think bias, because either I'm just so tired from the adversity after adversity, and in Gogo, I'm just looking at things through the lens of pain, and my friends will remind me and give an audit of my previous portfolio of evidence of how great I am. And I remember me, man, I'm being mean to myself. If this was another human being in Dimanga, I wouldn't speak like this to them. Most of us will self-judge. If we swapped the empty chairs, we say things to ourselves we would never say to another human being. But but to people you love, you don't speak like that. Where do you get off speaking like that?
So
people must learn to cultivate a kind voice to we cushion because if we believe in them. But it's that hindsight bias. You should have known. You should have known. You should know better. No, you are human, and there will be times where you don't know better. And only choosing words will teach you what better looks like.
So the subjective bias and being too hard on ourselves. So maybe as we enter 2022, let's deliver the same kindness that we normally deliver to others who have made, bad decisions or where things have not gone well. Let's deliver it to ourselves first. That's what I'm hearing you say.
We should. And we should look at others that are doing well, Fundi, that even there's a clear map that is within reach to do it. You should be inspired by the successes of others. They are human, made of flesh and bones like you. They are engineered in some lab that position them for success. They are human like you. And if a human can have that, it makes it humanly possible. And for me, that's a very, very good place to be in when you realize that things are humanly possible. When I was first year PhD, I generally felt like the least knower in the room, sitting with proper academic heavyweights here. And it just makes you feel like when I was an undergrad and people were at M, I had the same feeling. So this is a feeling familiar to me, that the beginning of a thing always looks like this. I'm not stupid. You can't be at a PhD level and you're stupid. But it's not like my brain didn't try to sell me that lie. That, are you as smart as you think, though? Are you sure? Are you as smart as you believed? Because, listen, you punched above your weight on this one. But then I remember that feeling all the time. In a new grade, I felt like I'd punched above my weight. In honors, I felt like that. In masters, I felt like that. So you must always pull back from your portfolio of evidence that you've been at this place and how that story ended was with triumph. So, and it was inspiring that they are so close. People who know so much, they're so close to me. They're not on a Google Scholar page. They are right here next to me, 10 digits away to send a WhatsApp. That was glorious. So delete envy, talk to your heart and be like, I'm jealous because I want that for myself. I know that, I acknowledge that, but speak from a place of longing, not of ridicule, that I wish I can get someday. How I wish that was me. Envision it when that is you. But it's unfair, Dr. Fundi, when someone has put merit behind something and you are mad that they got results. Because that means you don't be in the reward of achievement. Meaning when you have achieved, do you not want the end result to show? I can't look at someone who's building their YouTube channel for 4 years and I get jealous at its success. Because what am I saying? Must they labor hard every day, more than me and longer than me? But now the success, they mustn't get it because I don't have it. Because then we are saying hard work shouldn't look like that. But when I say UPHS doing well, I must be so affirmed that consistent merit, putting in work day in, day out, that is the end product. You should be affirmed in what you are doing by the fact that it's humanly attainable. But it's mean and it's unkind that and you get jealous when they have a thing because you don't have that thing.
Exactly.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
Yes, exactly.
Because they are contradicting you. You must be rewarded.
Yes. So Ulona, the last one from Lona, even when people we love mess up really bad, we still find polite words to talk to them. But when we do, the same, we then use awful words when we are the ones who've made mistakes. I do this a lot. I speak so negatively to myself. Yay, there's a lot to unlearn. Yeah, so you've just, helped Ulona to look at things slightly differently, even though yeah, but being hard to ourselves, is there no positive though? You don't take things for granted. Like Bobu, where you were thinking, I'm doing this first year PhD, I'm sitting with accomplished academics and stuff. Didn't I make a mistake? But isn't there the other side where it says it maybe pushes you to even do more? is it only negative? You know, that feeling over second guess. You know, can there be a positive thing?
We must be a people that is comfortable with stretching ourselves, you know, to the highest limits that there are. But the truth doesn't have to be unkind, because although what you are reflecting on is true, it doesn't necessarily have to be unkind. So Payana, I was truly the least knower in the room. That is a true statement, but never did I call myself an idiot. And another person would use an idiot referring to the same phenomena, but the way they are saying it doesn't inspire any change. So when people detail izinto, we are not saying they must almost make up a silver lining. No, tell the truth, but who are you talking to? And how are you saying that truth? Ulona is speaking to a very important thing that adults don't do, that you must invest in your vocabulary as a person. This thing about when you're upset, you don't have other words when I like, except for stupid and idiot and things like that. No. And if you don't have that vocab, borrow from the vocab of others. This is why people read books, listen to podcasts, buy about Dr. Fundi, your vocab, so you can semblance a better way of reasoning as an individual. Awena intrinsically ungenayo la vocab. Sikhulela emakhaya nazilokishi uva nobani epasejini. Therefore, when your internal voice doesn't consist of good words, you must acknowledge that my vocab of positive words. Therefore, when I'm backed against wall, I don't spew good words. Read books, listen to podcasts, go to therapy, exchange vocabulary with other people so you can introduce good words in your mind. I usually laugh it off to my therapist and say, she's done such wonderful work. Didn't just take it this and not take it this, like you know, that is how kind the voice inside my head is. As a result, I freeze if a person is good to me, because it's so foreign that a person can speak to me that way. It's just not the norm in my space and in my head. Therefore, when it comes from another person, I'm taken aback instantly, because that's just not language that is acceptable in my space and internally. But it takes internal work to realize that if you didn't have kind, affirming parents and systems and teachers, you don't have the kind words we are talking about. You must acknowledge that ibhijile vocabulary yakho yokuzincoma, yokuziteketisa, yokuziphatha kakuhle. We must take good care of ourselves, and that includes the space that you live in most of the time, which is your head. You live in your head most of the time. You spend most time there. You must invest in making sure it's full of beautiful lyrics, beautiful quotes from your favorite songs, nice memories. Take care of yourself, guys. It's self-care. It's just healthy experiences that even in memories and things you interact with daily, it's good experiences. That is what self-care is. It's taking care of yourself, and that is making yourself available to good experiences. You know, not escaping to go have a good experience at the spa. We're not talking about that self-care where you run away from your life to go have a good experience. No, your life must be a good experience. That is self-care. And vocabulary is one of those things. People mustn't talk to you anyhow. But people, even you mustn't talk to yourself anyhow.
Yeah, we left with I'll tell you now, 17 minutes to go. Yeah.
I think it's locus of control that we have been covered, but I suppose touched on things that touch a little bit on locus of control. And locus of control is the perception you have of your perceived control over matters. And as a person, you must always ask yourself, do I have, maybe even if you allocate percentages, internal locus of control or external locus of control? And people, for people that aren't familiar with these terms, external locus of control is always when things are happening to you. You know, stuff that is happening is completely in the hands of things that are outside of you. And this is paralyzing, guys. They just have fortune, because fortune is an external thing. Luck is an external thing. So when you believe other people are lucky, when you believe other people are fortunate, you are saying the good experiences they are having are due to some outside thing. And because you are not exposed to that thing, you don't have the same fortune. Internal locus of control is the opposite, where you really don't pay attention to systematic advantages that you've had. When you think everything and every success that you have had, it is because you are a great person and you work so hard and you are so disciplined. And these things will box you in such a place of shame when you fail. because it means, and modern society has done this to us. You think you are responsible for your life. It says that most we have quotes that you are the master of your own don. And although this is true, believing that you are responsible for your life, you seem to think you are responsible for all things that happen in your life. Therefore, when you are retrenched, you are going to think you are responsible for failing to provide for your children and not having the money to put food on the table. Locus of Control is saying, try your absolute best, that there is a healthy balance between your understanding of these things. People with an internal locus of control do not survive feelings of failure because they think the entire thing is my fault. And they don't look for solutions outside of them. And sometimes solutions are outside of you. Solutions are sometimes outside of you. You won't have a proper experience if you don't maximize on the opportunities that are outside of you, that are available to you, because when you believe, you know. And me, guys, believe me, I'm not judging this thing. I belong to this scale as well, where I just battle inviting help that does not come from inside. I have this fight with my friends all the time. Aren't you applying for funding? And I'm like, that did not even cross my mind, because I'm out here thinking, I this problem. I'm not going to knock on nobody's door, you know. So it's an ongoing learning for me to be like, ma'am, some things are up to systems. Some things are up to external structures. Some things are up to other people, you know. And as a person, you must come down a bit from this, you know, horse of self-righteousness and do well with others. You're going to run very authoritarian teams if you internal locus control. You know, you're not going to take in the creativity of others. You're not going to capitalize on the diversity that exists around you, because when you're right, and this and we are surrounded with solutions, guys. We are surrounded with solutions. So it affirmed that sometimes you must surrender to resources and capitalize, you know, on resources that are available to you. So audit yourself. Where does it come from? Do you have poor trust in others, or do you have overestimated trust in you? Because that is always the thing that underpins self-control. People that have been taught, remember, these things didn't come from some out of the blue. You know, all of us are born with a relatively clean slate, and experiences teach us how life operates. And sometimes those experiences taught us that don't count on people. But what we fail to do as adults is not being able to recognize that, but you've left that system that perpetually failed you. You've met other people, former schoolmates, and this isn't them, and this isn't those people. So you can't repeat the response you used to deal in a last situation or deal in a situation zone. It didn't come from somewhere. If you have excessive internal locus of control, it didn't come from nowhere. It came either people are unpredictable, or it came from neglect that abazenzi responsibilities are. So you must look after yourself if you want to survive. Same goes for the other one, where we hectically driven by religion, and you believe everything is up to you, so much that you even undermine the autonomy that God gave to humans, because you believe, we are agency na autonomy, Dr. Fundi. They're on the receiving end of whatever life is going to hand them. Whether it's desirable, grateful, or about situations say dangerous, because only the rescue, someone must come rescue me. Decide, but it's the way it's supposed to be. This is my destiny. And they are completely underestimating, but what do you mean? You can physically walk away from a dangerous situation. You know, so neither of these in extremities are good, because I know psychology rewards a lot people about the internal locus of control, because these are the people we can overcome, right? And then we are close to this grandiose, narcissistic, individualistic kind of thinking, because you just think when all resources to deal with life exist inside of you. Then you get medical illness. This is one of the phenomena that generally they can't get out of. You are chronically ill. Now, this is something you and all of your internal resources can't fight alone. Because then what are you going to do? Because now medication is the only outside force that can bail you out of this one. And then we see non-adherence, because Umtunje is just resistant to surrendering power and accept limitation, that there's things you can't do for yourself that need another thing or another person. A sense of control. So none of this is good in extremities. Locus of control is a good psychological tool. How failure do you account for the role that you played in this outcome? Okay, you know, the paper was too difficult, or the teacher doesn't like me, or we studied online, so I wasn't able to do XYZ. Is there any personal accountability at all, you know, that you are going to attribute to the matter? So when you reflect, think around these terms, am I not being biased in hindsight? Am I not perceiving this to have been more predictable than what it was at the time where I made this decision? And say earnestly that I really wish I could see into the future. How I wish I was wiser about this. Given the chance to go back, knowing what I know now, I would make a different choice. And once you surrender to Yongeland, you're able to see what good choices, if you think in the past you would have made a good choice, what good choices exist in the now, to prove to yourself that indeed, if ubunonikwa choice entsha good, ubunokuyithatha masibone ngoku ezizikhona. We do this a lot with patients that caught an infection or fell pregnant or whatever, and you're like, if when you knew what you know now and you were given good options, you would have chosen not to have unsafe sex. Masibone ngoku, where's options on the table? Medication is your best bet. When we are looking at this, are you going to take the best option or not? Since when you see it, knowing what I know, if I could go back, I circle back with excellent options on the table. Are you going to take the excellent option on the table? Okay, the wisdom of hindsight actually taught you anything, but yes, I'm wiser for it. And the only reason I'm wise and experienced is because of that experience. Do you like the experience? No. None of us like the experiences that made us very wise. None of us like them at all, but we are experienced because of them. You know, we are likely to fail less in the future because of how many times we know failing pathways. So when you see a person, they walk in with confidence and they're able to pinpoint just the right thing to do, you must give credit where it's due, that they attained the experience, must have an appetite for the experience, guys. It's not always going to be a nice experience, but it's an experience and it will teach you something. Some lessons are very painful and very expensive, but that's how we learn. Otherwise, we would all bypass pitfalls, right? If we had that ability as humans, allow yourself to be human. You are human, and that means you're uncertain about the future. It means you don't know as much as you think you know or wish to know. It means some things are not in your hands. Allow yourself to have the human experience and extend the same compassion to others. It will make you less judgmental when you are watching them and you judge them to simply be having a human experience. We will fail each other, we will fail ourselves. The human experience. If we wouldn't be wasting our time with wrong people, with wrong jobs, with wrong studying disciplines. We would all just jump to brilliant things and all live our peaceful lives. But so essentially, we are winging it. You know, come from that stance that we are winging it. We are winging it. You know, and you just cross your fingers and pray that may my lessons not have unreversible consequences. Some of them do. Otherwise, we all make mistakes, guys. Just that some are unfortunate that the consequences of the mistakes are also irreversible. But we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Whether visible to the next person or not, but we all make mistakes.
Usive Tony is saying, I have a problem of not accepting failure. Everything I set my mind and energy on must succeed. Right? So he's got no room for failure, right? This tends to frustrate me a lot when failure hits me. All right, so that's a comment I told you. Unambosi said, forgiving self is very difficult, and at times accepting that you also had a contribution on how you are treated by others is hard. Self-love is different when you see yourself worthless and useless, as you are told by others who don't accept.
Thank you, Dr. Fundi. And we're going to start with Kleina's comment. Sive is Dr. Tony's brother. Yes. So it's a common thing, you know, especially for people that hold themselves in high regard. When they set a goal and they are just, I suppose, rigid in how they plan this goal to materialize. And when you sit them down and you say, so how do you conceptualize failure? And you come from really a naive stance of trying to understand, So what is failure? And you'll see most people errors in how they conceptualized failure. That Dr. Fundi, sometimes something will be the process. That they miscalculated the process. So this thing didn't fail. This was always the process. Process and you realize that, okay, but you didn't accommodate process. And suddenly the conclusion is different from what you are saying. It's not I failed, it's I overestimated my timeline, for instance. The process overestimated the timelines. They think if I wish for it to be so, it must be so. But then when you bring them to the actual error, that don't you think, considering it turnaround times in the considering the job market and what companies are considering, are you sure that the fundamental error here was not the timeline? And then they agree that yes, it was the timeline. Or you see that the error was the person they did it with, that everything about the concept was right. This is why I'm saying do an audit of the whole experience. That from beginning to end, this was the plan, this is what I did, include all random details to say what went wrong here. And then you're going to see somebody partnered with the wrong somebody, somebody underfunded or underprepared in terms of financial resources that the thing will need, somebody overestimated the timelines or overestimated their capacity to be busy. Then when you actually see the audit of the errors, we plan a these are very remediable kind of things. And conclusion, all of a sudden it changed because I failed. Usually failing, the outcome I'd hoped for did not materialize, but that is not the right definition of failure. That is not what failure is. Things are slow, and that doesn't mean that it failed. Things are slow and we run out of money to do them, and it doesn't mean that it failed. But Abantu hold people prison to a commitment that they made. Even us, we hold ourselves prison to a commitment that we made when we didn't know what we know. And then because failure. So Dr. Fundi bethe ndizakuthenga imoto much. Nyani projections zakhe ibe feasible into yale moto. 2020 March COVID, and there is a bigger ask on your finances, and which renders imoto umzekelo a leisure and not a priority. Did Dr. Fundi fail? And us onlookers, we are holding him prison to this statement, and therefore we are saying that it failed. Or when our jonge goals zakho vision board, by ayikho imoto. Uphelile unyaka imoto ayikho imoto, and we say that they failed. So always when a person says to you they failed anything, you must always ask in wonder and genuine curiosity what they mean by that statement, and understand so that and in that narration of that story, you will see that there was a logical process that was followed here. And they fall victim to normal errors of thinking that humans have. And I know adjusters on this goal is still very much on plan. And a sign of maturity and of intellect, Dr. Fundi, is questioning your thinking and contradicting yourself regularly. If we were about 10 years, you are not thinking. Regularly, you must have permission to question and audit your ways of thinking and ways of doing things, an opportunity to transform. So if a man was in denial of my financial position, it's a thing to be proud of, to update your reality. They didn't fail. But because we said these things out loud, we seem to think, now you must hold up that commitment. Have a goal, have a plan, and then open up your appetite for it to not go how you intended. Dr. Fundi, when I plan something, how historical is that the outcome must be successful. I never genuinely know what successful actually looks like. So I don't know what my practice of success looks like. So I usually redefine every day over my team, because I just illustrated the construct. What is the principle? The principle is that I must excel.
Yes.
So must be goals that must be items. It goes that must be a principle.
Yes.
That when this has succeeded, what is going to tell us it has succeeded? And generally, you see be a cool success here. So I think possibly maybe referring to those things that I'm too rigid and prescriptive in how a success must look like, and when it doesn't look like that, I get frustrated.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. With the second person and Mazibesity.
It was basically saying forgiving self is very difficult. But because we've run out of time, I'm definitely still going to have a chat with you offline. I'm seriously thinking that we should have much more regular conversations, me and you. But let's talk about
guys.
You know, we will be combining yours and mine, and maybe once a month, Jay, we have a chat. But we'll talk about that. You know, I bring my people, you bring your people. We have a conversation. But let's talk about that. You know, offline. But thank you very much, man, Ziyanda. You know, the energy, the wisdom, that you've shared with us. I hope people have internalized it as we look at, auditing ourselves on what has happened, where we are, but also looking at where we're going in this 12 months, 2022. So I just want to say thank you. Enkosi kakhulu man Mkhaya. Ngumkhaya kaloku because ulapho ngoku. Thank you very much. I look forward to, more wisdom from you, and thank you to everybody who joined in. There were so many people with titles as Kalangoti are. That's but I think wonke umuntu ongenileyo apha ikhona into ayiphathisiweyo, anokuthi ayisebenzise njengoba singena kulonyaka umtsha. So ndiyabulela man kakhulu, and thank you to everybody who joined in, and may you have a safe and productive week ahead. Some people are only going back to work tomorrow. Some universities are starting tomorrow, like the medical schools and stuff. So, lucky are those people abakala ngoku emsebenzini. Some of us already by week 1 we're back. So all the best to everyone, those who've been at it already and those who are only going back tomorrow. All the best to you. Thank you.
Dr. Fundi, thank you to everyone that joined us, and I also wish them a full experience, not a good one, not a bad one, just a full human experience, whichever way it presents itself. And I suppose we'll see each other on these many platforms. Thank you for giving us the time. Yeah, do that. So we take it seriously. You choose to spend it on us. Thank you everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Dr.